Thank you for joining me. This is the Reddit Ranger, and if you notice, I'm doing a different Reddit sub today. I wanted to branch out a bit from just doing the D&D content. I'm going to be focusing that mainly, but every now and then I would like to branch out into other things. So here is today's. Now this is r/askreddit. What is your greatest "you can cut the tension in this room with a butter knife" story? Our first contribution is from A Gate. Graduation day at the college where I work, the commencement speaker, a famous journalist, is giving her inspiring speech, working in little bits of trivia about our school, but something seems off. And as she starts listing our famous graduates, we realize she's Googled the wrong college and is talking about the hyper-conservative Christian school 1,000 miles away that happens to have the same name. But the speech goes on, 15 more minutes with more awkward details she looked up on the wrong Wikipedia, and nobody wants to tell her while she's on stage. A murmur goes around. Even the graduates' parents have figured it out by now, and several thousand people slowly cringe themselves to death. To her credit, she graciously apologized on her TV show and gave the college a nice promo. That's embarrassing. Oh my god. I can't say this username on YouTube says, "I bartended in college." The new manager during the club rockin' at midnight proceeded to cut off the music and tell 200 drunk college kids about how he was 120 days sober and showed everyone his coin. Then he preached about sobriety and him not having custody of his kids for about 4 minutes before putting Little John back on so girls can twerk. No one twerked. Down as a reply to this, as a reply to the username. Username doesn't check out. Now this one from Woke Up 2. At a union management meeting, I got to tell my horrible boss how horrible she was. It was tense. She was investigated and assigned elsewhere. That's just the frickin' dream, isn't it? To anybody who's had just a terrible boss, that's just the dream. That you get to just be able to tell them off, and then they get to be investigated for all the horrible stuff they've done. Yeah, I'm very much with Child of Mike down here. That must have been satisfying, though. And apparently that wasn't even all of it, since further down, Woke Up 2 replies, within a couple of years of her arrival, some of our very best staff quit rather than take her on. She had hoped to move far up in management and was humiliated to be moved out. Now we have this contribution from Illogical Futurity. Same thing happened at a place I worked at, but it was the owner who dumped on the manager. Manager thought she'd get a promotion and was greedy the entire week. She was less venomous, but made it clear she'd not miss any of us. After the owner gave her the what's up and fired her, it was so quiet you could hear a mouse fart. She then walked away, but you could hear items being thrown, and she started yelling and swearing. Security had to drag her out. When it was known she was fired, some of the employees who quit were quite happy to return. Now down below we have a huge contribution from Roki Smiles. I was 8. My father had suddenly shown back up out of nowhere, wanting a relationship with me after no contact since I was 6 months old. My mom let it happen as long as I was comfortable, but her lawyer suggested she fight for him to pay child support. He was supposed to, never did, etc. Well, we were all at a restaurant, me, my mom, her boyfriend, my grandparents, my dad, his parents, and my half-sister. Same dad who did the exact same stuff to her, and her mom was 5 years prior to me. And things were alright at first. I was uncomfortable, as was my sister, but it was, The plan was that my grandparents and my sister's mom would take us both out of the restaurant when everyone was done eating. Lawyer would serve my dad with papers in the parking lot after we were long gone, and the inevitable fight that would ensue would either be A, softened by the fact that we were in public, or B, even if they didn't have enough tact not to pitch a fit in the parking lot, us kids wouldn't be around to witness it. Yeah, well, my dad's parents kept yanking me and my sister back for photos, and the lawyer ended up serving the papers while we were still there, and the 10 seconds of silence as my dad and his parents realized what was happening is still one of the most uncomfortable things I have ever experienced in my entire life. My mom and my sister's mom were trying their best to get us into the car before the blow-up, but yeah, that's when I learned the real reason my dad and his family weren't in my life. LMAO. I can't go back to this restaurant anymore. It causes me major anxiety. Edit. Oh my god, I just remembered another incident involving my mom's boyfriend's son that might be even worse than this, and it happened in the same restaurant. Now for a little background, my mom and her boyfriend, we'll call him R, have been together since I was in the first grade. I've known this man longer than I've known my biological father, and they have a son together. However, R also had a son, J, with another woman before he met my mom. His ex-wife was a closeted lesbian. We lived in the deep south, who got married to a man to appease her parents and ended up trying to commit. She was luckily unsuccessful, and she and R split ways on decent terms, and she now has a life partner. Now this life partner is a piece of work. I have nothing against LGBT people. I am bisexual myself. This woman is just a nightmare. When Jay graduated high school, his mom and her life partner were both invited to attend the graduation and the after party. Everything was going fine at the party until suddenly Jay is handed a card from life partner and goes really pale and really quiet. People notice but try to act like they hadn't and move on with the conversation, but it's clear something is wrong. Jay pulls my mom aside and shows her the card and asks her if she thinks it's appropriate. She's confused at first, but then reads the text at the bottom and also goes quiet. At this point, everyone can no longer ignore that something's off, and everyone goes silent while R asks to see the card. Jay's mom's life partner has written in this card, "Congratulations, love, Mom." This adult woman that had nothing to do with Jay had just referred to herself as Mom in this card. It was stomach-churningly awkward because she just sat there and said, "What?" with this smug smile. We shouldn't go to this restaurant anymore. I got another poster down below who asks, "Absolutely okay if you don't want to share, but I'm curious to know the reactions." And thankfully OP responds, "No, it's okay." Basically, my dad's mother lost her cool. Started screaming at my mother, claiming she had kept me away from them. Not true at all. He walked out on her when I was 6 months old and stopped all contact, which was for the best, because he was a raging alcoholic. And how my mother was a woman of the night, blah blah. My mom didn't pay it any attention because her focus was now getting me and my half-sister out of there. My dad didn't really say much. He just kind of stood back and let his mom do all the work. His dad bumped off and went to the car at some point. Eventually, I was able to get into my half-sister's mom's car. I know her well. She's essentially an aunt to me. When my dad's mom ripped open the door and tried to yank me out. My mom rightfully lost her cool at that and had to be physically restrained. Cops were called, situation was dealt with. Dad's mom was essentially told to get the heck out or she'd be arrested for disturbing the peace or something like that. Long story short, he did end up going to court and had to pay child support. I never saw his parents again, and he showed up periodically throughout my life until I was 12 and told him I wanted nothing to do with him after he accused me of being my mother texting him through the phone. LOL. It was a huge mess. And comment down below, a taste for family drama must have been realized early. Kudos for coasting through that one. OP responds, "It helped he basically lived across the country from us and was essentially a stranger, so it wasn't like a huge loss. I was more scared my mom was going to get hurt that night than anything. My mom isn't perfect, but I think she handled my dad as best she could have. He got with her when she was very young, 23, and he was 31, and essentially saved her from a horrifically abusive marriage. They broke up after 2 years after he got super drunk and shot holes in the roof with a gun." Yep. Wow. And finally linked up with my half-sister's mom and found out that he was an out-and-out narcissist that came from a family of alcoholics. After they broke up, she found out she was pregnant, called him, asked him how involved he wanted to be. He agreed to be a part of my life, but as I said, bailed when I was 6 months old and basically handed full custody over to my mom. Despite all that, she never badmouthed him until I made the decision to stop contact with him. She encouraged me to get to know him if that's what I wanted, and made sure I was always comfortable. She supported every decision I made about him wholeheartedly and didn't add her own input unless asked. From talking with some of my friends in similar situations, I think she handled it pretty well for someone so young when this all sort of happened to her. Got a reply down below, wow, that's one heck of a story. I hope you're doing all right. Opie responds, I am. I just got accepted into college and life is looking up. Had a few rough years in between, but also had a really good support system with my friend, sister, mom, and mom's boyfriend. And Agate replies, in hindsight, the big mistake was doing this with your dad's parents around. In my experience, nobody's as duty as someone trying to stand up for a family member. The parents have all of the outrage and none of the guilt. OP replies, I believe the situation was that they weren't supposed to be there, but showed up anyway. They tended to do that a lot. He'd say it was only him, and they'd walk in right after him. Probably should have planned on it, but he tended to leave, disappear for a year and a half, and then randomly show back up, so I'm sure the lawyer was just trying to force his hand before he could take off again. This next contribution's from Laura Michelle. It wasn't in a room, but a conference call when I worked in a credit card fraud. A married couple were joint on a checking account. Just a little education, as long as you're joint on an account, you can have all information on the account. Anyway, wife calls and says, this charge isn't mine, blah blah blah. I look it up, see it's her husband's card. After some digging, it was for a premium dating service. I told her this. She was like, that's not him, we need to fill out a fraud form. I explained that since it was on his card, he has to fill it out, so I would need to speak with him. Well, the wife wanted it sorted out ASAP because they were leaving on vacation soon and wanted new cards ASAP if they needed them. She asked if she could conference him in. She did. She told him that he needed to fill this form out because someone stole his card number and signed up for POF Premium. He said, well, it's not a big deal. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. That's when it hit me. Wife was confused. She then asked him why he wasn't concerned. He said, well, maybe we should make sure there are no other charges. Big mistake. Wife got on the mobile app while on the phone, looked at transactions, found hotels, restaurants. That's when it hit her. I have never felt so uncomfortable in my life. They were screaming. She was calling him names that would make the elderly have a stroke. I'm pretty sure they got divorced. The account was later closed. This happened way too often, but this was the first time. If you're going to do anything like this, don't use a joint account. TLDR, worked in credit card fraud for a bank. Husband was cheating on wife, and wife tried to file fraud and found out with me on a conference call with husband. Yikes. Down in the comments, Dirty Scandy pretty much sums it up as exactly what I was thinking. Or, and hear me out, maybe don't cheat on your spouse. Now we have this contribution from I Am What I Am What I Am. At my sister's wedding, her frenemy showed up wearing a white dress, and to make it known, she came upstairs to her room at the banquet hall before the big entrance. Classic Italian wedding, you know? She walked in, and all of us bridesmaids and my sister were just slack-jawed. She had zero reason to come upstairs except to show off her floor-length white dress. Down in the comments, PM me your hopes and dreams. I just don't understand the mentality here. Is there a single person anywhere who would think, wow, she really showed the bride, rather than think, that guest in the white dress must be a mega grunt? That just makes yourself look bad. I worked in a small jewelry store in a very green/environmentally aware city. We were in the middle of a trunk show with a well-known local designer. The store is full of locals who love her work, and a very loud, well-dressed gentleman comes in to look at the jewelry. He makes himself and his conversation with the designer impossible to ignore, gesturing animatedly and commenting loudly. A few minutes into their conversation, he mentions that he has a piece of ivory that he would like to have made into a custom piece of jewelry. It's not uncommon to come across vintage ivory, coral, or like materials in artisan jewelry that were sourced in a different time when things like that were legal. The designer tells this gentleman that she would be happy to work with vintage ivory as long as it has been appraised and she can see the paperwork. He responds, loudly, "Oh, I paid someone to let me hunt it last year." Dead silence in the whole store. I think he thought people would be impressed, but I swear you could feel the temperature drop. He tucked his tail between his legs and used the I might be back later online before hurrying out. Never saw him again. Eesh. Already a pretty environmentally aware city, and you're going to admit to poaching. That's a good look on you. I don't know why nobody just called the cops on him. So that was r/Askreddit, and my Askreddit question of the day is, what do you think of the super cheap backgrounds I have going on right now?